Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate coming. I love the TiE events. I'm a sponsor of TiE. I even traveled to India for the first time in August. And I went to Bangalore. We did some talks there. And let me tell you, it was quite a christening coming from here and seeing the real ecosystem of TiE. And I know I'm not here just to promote TiE, but it's amazing. And you don't realize how big it is until you've really seen these other areas in Bangalore and in Delhi. It really is something special. And locally here, it's pretty amazing. So if you ever have any questions about how I can help you with TiE and help you with your startups, reach out to me. You'll all get my contact information. So I also dedicate a lot of time to TiE members. So when you call me, you're not going to be on the clock, right? I can charge you for it. And I'll be happy to give everybody their free hour or two if they have some open questions about intellectual property, right? My gift to TiE. So I want this to be an interactive event too. We're going to leave a lot of time for questions because it's much more interesting talking about what you want to talk about rather than something I may have pre-prepared. So there's different levels from what I can tell from people I've spoken to of knowledge of intellectual property, experience in intellectual property. So I'm going to do a little primer here, but not too much, right? So intellectual property, patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, right? This is all intellectual property, right? And things you don't touch. These are ideas and manners in which you protect ideas and different expressions, right? So the more simple ones, copyright, for example. Copyright is protection from copying this thing that you've created, a book, a sculpture, a movie, right? You own the rights when you create something like that. As soon as you've created them, you have rights. As long as it's original, it's original by you that you created, you have rights of copying. That means other people cannot copy the thing that you made. And the way you protect copyrights is you register them. It's the simplest, least expensive thing to do. For a book, you submit a copy of your book and a cover sheet. For software, you can copyright software. And you don't have to take your source code and submit that. No one would ever want to do that. But it's more symbolic. You submit the first few pages, the last few pages in a cover sheet, right? Sculptures, pictures of the sculpture. Movies, copies of the movie. And the fees are, if you hire somebody to help you with it, it's maybe $100, $200 to register these things. And the rights that it gives you is the ability to, a couple things. When you register them, if somebody copies them, you can go after them for damages, right? And if you have them registered with the US Copyright Office, you can get $100, $1,000 per copy that they make. So you can end up making more off copyright infringement sometimes than your actual product, right? So there's big penalties for intentionally violating copyrights, right? So when you have, yes, question?
A little confusing. Does it have to be registered by in the U.S. office or copyright and just proceed and either got copyright protection?
Good question. So do you have protection? The question is, do you have protection if you don't register it? Yes, you do. You have your own protection against copying, right? In fact, you have it worldwide. Some countries are different. It's very much harmonized. But there are rules that give you protection against copying. Registering it gives you something more. It gives you what's called statutory damages. So if you are registered, someone is infringing it, then you can sue them for your lost damages. You can get an injunction, get them to stop selling your stuff. And you can also get these itemized damages, which can end up being millions of dollars depending on the copies. Question, Paul?
So let's say I produce a document in 2013, and I put a copyright notice saying copyright 2013. And I see some people put also then 2018, 2019, whatever else. What is the rule? Why should one do one versus another?
Yeah, it's the update, right? So the date indicates when you created the thing, right? So if you make a Mickey Mouse movie or something, right? You make your own movie and you copyright it 2017, that is the date when your period starts, right? So you have damages based on that time, right? It also is an indicator for people who may copy, who would have access to that. Are they violating your copyrights? So let's say, for example, you created something in 2017, you filed for copyright, and someone made something that was very similar to yours, and it looks like a copy. They had access to yours. You have this public thing. Maybe let's say it's a book, right? But they are able to show that they registered this thing in 2015, right? It might be very similar. It happens all the time. Though it's similar to yours, they didn't have access to yours because they copyrighted it in 2015. And they have to have proof of that. They have the proof. And that proof is that registration. They sent a copy of it, right? So the date is important. The date is important. And when you see these different dates, like you'll see Microsoft, copyright. They have patents, they have copyrights, they have trademarks, right? Copyright is one of them. And you'll see copyright, Microsoft, 2018. And then you'll see it 2019. That's because it's updated. It's updated. Even when they give you updates, even if you don't buy the product, you get an update of your software, they're going to update that copyright registration. And they'll list them, usually. You'll see them, 2015, 2016, 2017. Those are all the different updates. Yeah.
So wasn't it like, I put the 2013, if let's say the original was 2013, because I'm trying to sort of stake my claim from 2013 onwards.
Right.
So re-adding 2018 or 2019 means, do I extend my copyright further, or is it just like, obviously the content is going to be edited again, right?
Right. It means that it's been updated then. So you're creating new content, theoretically, right? So if you created it in 2013, if you don't have any changes, there's no point in saying 2018 because you've already got your date. You haven't updated anything.
So you were saying we should do both. If, let's say it's a website. I created the original website in 2015, but obviously website is going to change
Right.
almost every month.
Right.
So I should add 2018, 2019, whatever,
When you update it, that's right. Or a technical manual, you might add a new chapter, an entirely new chapter. So that's an updated copyright. So you have a copyright in 2013, and if you have added this chapter in 2018, then that's what you've got, right?
Isn't there a copyright for a series, so you don't have to continually keep sort of registering if you stated that it's a series or something?
Well, yeah, but when you create new content, it's an update. It's an update. And if it's important and if it's valuable, if this is something people pay money for, then you'll pay that $100 or so to get that update, so that way you have it registered. So if they copy this update, or just the updated part, then you get damages because you registered it. If you don't, you don't. That's really what it is, right? So you want to put your copyright tag on the stuff that you think people are going to copy so you can get statutory damages. Right?
Get into detail.
Sure, I don't mind.
Put the copyright and you put the date. Can you put the date if you have not registered with that time you did it, or you can only put the date?
You could put the date when you created it. That's the date.
Even if it's not registered.
Right. Now the circle R, right? So it's not registered, so you can't say it. But registered is the date you registered it. So that's easy. That's easy. That's trademark. I'll get the trademark in a minute. Right. Copyright date. Registration date means something different. So copyright date is when you created it. Registration date is when you registered it. Right.
So if someone puts in the copyright 2019 year, what prevents someone in China, Malaysia, or maybe some other part of the world?
India.
Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
What prevents someone else to just copy the whole idea and then put C 2019 himself or themselves?
It's copyright theft. So if they let's say you copy your book and they sell your book, you've stolen that book, right? Essentially, you're violating the copyrights. You don't have a right to make a copy of that.
So with books, there's a trace, right? Like printing of the book and this and that. But
Right.
Something like a software, or an application or something like that, there may not be a trace.
Well, we're talking about discoverability, right? So copyrights, you're going to assume it's discoverable, right? So copyrights don't find your lost software. They don't find your lost books, and they don't help you enforce it. What it does is it gives you a label. So when you discover that someone is copying it, then you have your registration, right? There was someone actually from TiE who came to me, and he developed software. It's some kind of, let's say it's just some service software. He had this security software module that he kind of tagged on. He just kept reusing it, but he created this thing, right? And he just added it on to anybody who would buy his software. And he ran into somebody who said, oh, I know your company. We're standardized on you. And he's like, I don't know your company. How could you be standardized on my software? Well, it turns out that somebody took this separable piece of code, and they were giving it to all their customers. Millions of customers. Now, this thing was, he didn't even see anything as valuable because it wasn't like his core product. This was just some security thing, but it was proprietary. He created it himself. It wasn't even, free code. I mean, it wasn't even open source. Finds out millions of downloads from a very big company, right? And he had the thing registered. He had no idea that, he didn't even know what the thing was worth. And the damages were thousands of dollars per copy. So millions of copies. It was just such an outrageous case, right? And you just never know, especially with software. It's so easily copied. You never know when you're going to get the thing copied. So you might even think it's not worth anything. It doesn't even need to be worth anything, but it's yours and it's original, right? So I'll tell you a quick story about copyrights. It's funny, I didn't come here to talk about copyrights, but copyrights are pretty interesting sometimes. There was a company called i4i Software. They developed an editor for software code, right? So Microsoft went out and they were looking for best of class, a product to buy, right? So they went to i4i and they went under NDA, talked to them, and they were talking about possibly acquiring them. And they looked under the hood, gave them all the details. Microsoft went dark. Tell me if you haven't heard this story before with any other type of thing, right? Yeah, it's the kind of the reputation, right? So they came out with Windows 8, and wouldn't you know, they had their editor. It was the exact same editor, right? And they wouldn't have even known it if they weren't looking for it. They filed a patent on it. They couldn't prove that it was copyright, there was copyright infringement because they couldn't get the code. And it was difficult to prove the trade secret theft either because it's a lot to prove. But they had a patent that covered the basic function. They sued Microsoft. Microsoft fought them right to the Supreme Court just because they don't want to lose. They end up losing the whole case. Paid millions for it, right? So copyrights, these are different tools you can use to protect whatever your software is, whatever your product is, and it's not always one single answer, right? So it's good to use these as different tools. So let me go into the other intellectual property. We talked about copyright a lot. We'll get back to questions on copyright later if you need to. Trademarks are, the purpose of a trademark is to protect the public from confusion of goods. That's the purpose. People don't always say that. They don't always understand it that way. The purpose of a trademark is to protect you, customers, the public in general, from being confused. So when you go to McDonald's and it's all labeled and everything, it's not a knockoff, you know you're going to get, although it's kind of bad food, it's the food you like, you know it's always going to be consistent, and you know where it's from, you know the source of the goods. If you create confusion, then that can be a violation of trademark. And the confusion happens when you have a trademark that's similar, or a logo that looks similar, a color scheme that looks similar. So people looking for the same product are confused, they buy yours thinking it's theirs, right? So you register your trademark by, you have two ways of trademark. You can either get a logo, which is a visual, or the word. So it doesn't matter the font, the color, anything, you register the word. And you can file them separately, you cover them separately. And they do a search, you describe the product description, it's called the product class, and you're limited to what you can protect. So if you're selling shoes, you can't go after someone who's selling spray paint who has the same name, because there can't be any confusion. They're not going to buy your shoes thinking it's spray paint, right? So it's limited to that class. That's why when you register your trademarks, you have to be very careful and in detail describe your product so that you're limited to what your protection is, but it's also clear what you're protecting. So the purpose of trademarks is for your brand, your product brand, your house brand, your company, all these names that you use to label. It protects other people from confusion, right? And it's also important to note that for trademarks, you want to make sure that you cover all the aspects of your product as well. In software, there's multiple classes. So it can get complicated, but again, you want the really clear details of the product so that you know what you have, what you are protecting. Now, it's easy to ascertain whether somebody has copyrights or trademark rights because you have a registration, it's a stamp. It's very clear. So that if say if your company's getting acquired, they're doing due diligence, one of the questions is, do you own your intellectual property? It's easy to prove copyright if you've registered it. It's easy to prove that you own your trademark if you've got a really valuable brand because you've registered it and it's assigned to the company and you own this thing, right? Patents are more complicated. They have all the similar aspects. Companies can own them. They describe products, they describe function. But it's not a registration. Not like copyright. You know what it is. It's very clear what it is. Trademarks are very clear what they are. A logo or a name and the product description. No confusion there, no gray area, right? You know what it is. Yes?
The gray area is in the extension of the name. So for instance, Google is trademark, but can I trademark Google car or Google gear or Google water?
Mm-hmm.
Can I trademark Google water?
No,
No?
I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. Good point. Point well taken. I say no gray area. I mean, not so much gray area. But you're right, there's gray area in every area of law. That's how lawyers stay employed, right? If everything was clear, it's kind of like the permanent haircut, right? I mean, if your hair is never going to change, you're never going to go back and get your hair cut again, right? You have continued business, right? So lawyers specialize in making things obscure, but it's not true. It's when you get to the corner cases, it's really important to understand these things. And it's a good point too, because as startup companies, I always encourage startup companies to choose a name that is not like others, not like Google or Ford Motor Company or GM, right? White space, right? Like I have a client that's in the security space. Every trademark in the whole industry uses the word threat. I don't know how you stand out if everybody has that name threat. I said, why don't you call your product orange, right? People will never forget that because oh my God, they're just calling it orange. It's not threat. I mean, I wonder what it does. The trademark is not supposed to say what it does. In fact, one of the rejections for trademarks is descriptiveness, right? So if you, for example, an absurd example, let's say shoes with a Z, right? You're selling shoes, right? And it stands out. You have logo and everything. You can't register shoes, even with a Z. Because if you can stop people from using the word shoes in selling shoes, they can't sell their shoes because they can't describe what's in there, right? So if you're descriptive in your trademark, then that's a rejection. And it also causes confusion. The whole purpose of a trademark is to not confuse the public, right? Shoes. Oh, they could go buy any shoes and be confused now, right? Even if not with a Z, because it covers phonetics too. You can't get cute and use different letters, right? Or S-H-U-Z, right? Doesn't matter. People know it sounds like shoes, right? So you can't get cute there. You also can't get cute with very powerful trademarks, right? Nike. Nike means nothing outside of Nike, right? I remember I used to travel to South America when I was younger, and did a lot of traveling, for aid traveling missions and things like that. My uncles were Catholic priests. And we would go to these markets and they'd have Nike spelled with a Y, right? Even that is confusing. It still sounds like Nike, right? They thought they were getting away with something. Of course, I bought these because they were hilarious, right? I'd wear them home. My friends would be laughing at me. They have these misspelled Nike socks, right? You can't do those. It's confusing. But Nike is also so powerful. They're so powerful that if you made a Nike headset, they still know that company. And they would be confused because Nike makes lots of things. You might make a headset for jogging. They would say it's for jogging. Well, we cover that too, right? It's so powerful and it's so descriptive. There's nothing else like it. Sony, Google, great examples. Those were complete white space trademarks. They meant nothing. In fact, I met the attorneys who came up with the word Sony together with the company Sony. They spent months trying to find a word as short as possible that meant nothing in any language. What a funny prospect, right? I mean, you're looking for something that really means nothing. It was the most brilliant exercise you've ever seen, right? It happened a long time ago, but it means nothing, and it doesn't offend anyone, and they can pronounce it. There's no L's and no R's. So any Asian country doesn't have any problem saying Sony, right? And yeah, not just that, it really meant nothing. So when Sony had that trademark, they could cover it, and it was absolutely distinctive. So you try to put Sony on a briefcase, you try to put Sony on a watch, right? Well, I guess they make watches. But anything that they wouldn't get into, it's such a strong mark, they can stop you because it's so strong, right? Google, what's so unique about Google, it is truly everywhere. It is truly everywhere. Unless you're on a remote island with no wireless, and I don't think those exist anymore, right? But you're just never going to get away with it, right? So powerful marks can overcome any of these barriers. So even though they've only registered it with a number of classes, the products that they actually use, by the way, you can't just register a trademark in every class. You need to prove that you're using your trademark in those classes. So everybody tries to get greedy and say, oh, I want to get all the classes, right? Because I want to cover the world with this trademark. That's not what trademarks are for. And you can't successfully do that. You just can't. You need to have continued use of the trademark in that product class. So don't try to get cute and file trademarks in all the classes, right? In fact, I had an attorney who actually wasn't very smart, and he filed trademarks in all these classes, and he started filing trademark lawsuits against them, right? He would try to do this token use. He would try to use it once or a few times, and he ended up getting actually in a lot of trouble doing that, right? So with Google and trademarks like that, even though they're not in other classes, they can be very powerful just because it's so recognizable. You can't not recognize them. And it's unusual. There's only a few of them. Sony, Google, Nike, right, things like that. So with trademarks, like copyrights, registration is pretty definite. It's pretty definite. You know what it is. And as long as you maintain these trademarks and copyrights, and they truly cover what you express copyrights, they truly cover and are used properly, you mark your products. With software, it's like written in the splash page or whatever it is. You're using the software, you see the trademark, that kind of thing. You mark it. So there's no mistaking that this trademark is being used and only being used by you. Right? Any questions on copyrights or trademarks? You can tell I can talk for a half hour on any question that you talk to. So if you really want to, sure. This half hour is yours.
Maybe trademark some very ordinary things like my home address or my car number plate or something.
Yeah.
Can
You can't. You can't. It's well, it has to be distinctive, right? Well, so what product are you talking about, then? Give an example of a product.
No, I'm just saying my home address, for example. I'm living, let's say, number 1 Alameda or something.
Yeah.
So that's like unique, and it could be used for like Park Street or Park Avenue or something.
Right.
You could use that address potentially for selling brand, for teenagers' t-shirts or whatever.
Sure. Sure. If you can label the product, if there's no confusion with other trademarks, right? 805, that's a beer. You look at 805, you know what it is. You don't see Miller 305, that would be a trademark infringement, right? It's very clear what that number is. 1 Alameda could be a restaurant. Of course you could trademark your restaurant. I'm 1 Alameda. I'm not only the one restaurant, I'm the only one at that address. There's no other address on the street, right? So it's one Alameda. There could be a one Alameda in New Mexico. That would be interesting, right? So now I want to call my restaurant one Alameda, right? What's really interesting is you can, let's forget the internet exists for a second, right? So you got a restaurant in New Mexico, you get a restaurant here, right? The famous case is some donut shop in Southern California where it was just a donut shop. You're just a restaurant, one Alameda. One Alameda has existed. We're using our trademark. It's on our menus. It's on our building. And this is our trademark, right? New Mexico wants to use it, and they register it. Look out, they're registering it. They come after you. Hey, that's ours. I had first use. What are you talking about? Well, since you're in separate places, and there's no, people usually walk or drive to a restaurant. They don't get up and fly, to one Alameda for dinner, necessarily, right? They give you a territory. So each of you gets a territory. This is your territory of distinctiveness, of allowed use, and as long as there's no overlap, you're okay. Now, fast forward to today, and you've got the internet. That's kind of a problem, right? Now, if you've just got a website, it's not a strong argument saying, hey, I got a website. I got to put that guy out of business. No, you can't do that. But if you have a chain, or if you sell your products online, so you're shipping, you have T-shirts, you're shipping, prepared meals anywhere you want, right? Okay, now you've got some reach. Now your trademark is relevant on the internet, plus anywhere you ship. Now you've got overlap. Now they look at first use. They look at first use. Yeah. Question?
There was a case in Half Moon Bay of a family that owned the McDonald's coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe McDonald's won a suit against them, but it is their family name, and I think they had to change the MC to MK or something like that.
Try that.
But,
Yeah. What was that movie? Coming to America? Remember the movie, Coming to America? Where the guy had a McDonald's chain. He's like, I'm not paying McDonald's anymore. So he called it McDougal's. And he made everything really, he would brag about how much he made it different, but it really looked like McDonald's, right? And he was constantly in this battle. There was a restaurant, A&W Root Beer in Allen Park, Michigan, where I grew up. He got tired of paying these fees, so he called it Rita's, right? Everything was exactly the same, the colors, the color scheme. He didn't even make his own menus. He went into the menus and covered up the A&W stuff with Rita's, even like a circle, not even the whole thing, right? He was always on the edge, right? And they'd send people in, and they even changed the names of the restaurant burgers slightly, because he wanted the same attraction from people. He just didn't want to pay the fees, right? And he got away with it. He got away with it. So, but there was no confusion. That was his argument. There's no confusion. I changed it enough, right? It's kind of a funny case, but he was successful, right?
Coming back, just like 805 beer, can there be an 806 beer?
As long as there's no confusion. Yeah, and so, okay, now we're got gray area, okay? I was totally wrong. I should never say there's no gray area, right? So 805, 806, right? Is there confusion? Well, hey, if you're the 805 owner, you better believe there's confusion. If you're 806, no, there's no confusion. We're 806. People can tell the difference between a 5 and a 6, right? And it really comes down to, would a reasonable person be confused? 805, 806, right? You might think, well, they incremented it up one, but maybe it's just their premium brand, right? They just made it 806, right? So you can do whatever you want, but when you start stepping over, when you're choosing your trademark, don't do it, right? You don't want these fights. Trademark disputes are bullshit. You don't want to do that. You don't want to plan your business anticipating a fight. You don't need to steal the business from 805. Make your own good beer and call it ABC. I don't know, call it something else, right? Win on your product, right? You never win by trying to steal other people's customers with confusion. And trademark disputes are nasty. They're in front of judges. Trademark lawyers are expensive, right? And it's just a fight that's not worth fighting, right? So when we file trademarks, and often they'll say, we love this mark, we want this mark, we want this mark. I say, let's look at 10 marks that you really love. Let's make sure they're available. And if there is a mark you love, and especially if it's a consumer product, right? That's different than business to business. Business to business, it's less important. It really is. Like when you're selling something to Intel or you're selling a computer chip or something like that, do you think they care about the trademark? They know who you are. They know where they're buying it. They want the pinouts. They want to know, give me the functional spec, give me the pinouts, show me how it plugs in. I don't care what label you put on. When I close my box, I don't even see it. Who cares, right? Consumer products, very different, very different. You build up your company's personality. They recognize you. They recognize everything about you. Consumers, you know how weird they are. You know, they're really invasive. When they buy something, they think they really understand you. And you don't want any kind of confusion. And if you really have something unique, if you have that Nike, if you have that Sony, it could be extremely valuable, right? So you want to make sure that you use it properly, right? And that it's not near anything else. The further you are away from your competition, the more valuable your trademark is. The closer you are, the less valuable your trademark is, the less valuable it is. So being a cutesy startup company, right, you get your company acquired, they're looking at your intellectual property. What's it worth? And they look at these things, they itemize these things, and they can assess a value based on other models. You can't just make this up. We have 15 trademarks. I had a client that they had 61 trademarks. They had 4 products, and they were computer chips. What the hell are you doing with all those trademarks, right? I mean, what are those things? Are you really throwing out this big net and capturing people? No. So he went into his technical documents, and he was choosing words out of there, trademark, and his idea was that he thought if he used them and trademarked them, his competition couldn't. And he was totally wrong, right? There were 4 trademarks that were worth anything in that portfolio. And I convinced the company just to abandon the rest. It really wasn't worth anything. It's not worth anything. They're not worth anything if it's not labeling a specific product, right? So when you file a trademark, just to give you an example, descriptiveness, right? Describing this thing that you do, right? Don't use it in a sentence on your website because that by definition is descriptive, right? So if you're saying, this threat vilifier, right? This is a security thing, right? Threat destroyer, right? Or threat extractor. Now that sounds really functional, doesn't it? That sounds pretty descriptive to me. You guys know what a threat is. It's a bot. It's something coming in. It's a threat to your data, right? And if you have something that's used in a sentence where it says, then the bot is extracted with the threat extractor, right? You've just described this thing descriptively, right? The trademark examiner will look at this. There's your website. It's not descriptive. It's descriptive on your website. It's on your own. In fact, I'll tell you, the first place they look is your own website because that's where people use it, right? So if you're using descriptive trademarks, you're going to trip over your own self because you have to describe your product. Do you understand? I mean, so you want to have very clean trademarks. And when a company is acquiring you, they're going to look at this. They have that's part of the due diligence. They're going to look at your trademarks. And they're going to look and see, they might do a search to see who else is using them. If it's a consumer-based trademark, they're going to want to know, okay, this is the kind of thing that can be valuable. Business to business, less valuable, right? Consumer products, if you've got millions of users, if you've got millions of products that you've sold, that new hairbrush or curling iron or something, right? It's going to be easily recognizable. Companies like Scrunchy will want that because that's how they sell products, with these names and their brands. So when they put them up in Walmart, they have these trademarks. Those are extremely valuable. And they can start making new products under those same trademarks. Really valuable. So if you want a valuable trademark, get that white space trademark. Get that thing that means nothing. I know it seems perverse. I want my trademark to be identifiable. It describes what I do. No, you don't. I know it sounds counterintuitive. The trademark is a label. In fact, logos are even more valuable because they say absolutely nothing. You can see it with the eye. Any more questions on trade? I haven't even touched patents yet, which is really interesting to me. Yeah?
The brand new entrepreneur, how much is the process is complicated to getting any registration or getting into these IPs to register or get locked.
How complicated is it to register it?
Yeah. I mean, the process, the
Yeah.
entire process, how much is, say as a brand new entrepreneur, we should focus on some pre-launching stuff. And this is also same important,
Mhm.
but how much easy it is. Like, if I get some idea, I can go and block something in some website or a government official thing, so that can be blocked. So after some time, I can officially get registered on my name. So at least to block, and what is the timeline and how much is it complicated the process?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how can you grab this intellectual property, register it, and own it quickly? Before you go, how much trouble does it take? Do you have to wait until your product is developed?
As an entrepreneur, what we should be prepared to,
Yeah.
to get it as, because of the billion ideas, my ideas can be same for lakhs of people. So I should go first and grab it.
Yes.
So how much is the, how can we get the soup?
Okay. Snatching and grabbing things that are related to your ideas are closely related to patents. So let me talk about patents before we talk about that. When it comes to snatching and grabbing your trademark, you do that when you're ready, when you have your trademark. And if it's really valuable to you, it's a first to file, so you want to get that thing. Now, you can file a trademark with an intent to use, meaning that you have your trademark, you know what product you're going into, right? Get that description, you file it, it goes through the examination process, and then it publishes for 60 days for the world to see and say, oh, no, that's confusing with mine, they can protest. But once it's through there, it's ready to register. And in order to get the register, so you could use the circle R, you must show them proof of use. Here's a photograph of my server with my trademark on it. Here's a copy of the first page of my software when it comes up with my trademark, right? Here's where I use my trademark. That's proof of use, right? And then you can register it. You can extend that for 5 years because it happens sometimes. You're developing a product, sometimes it takes a long time, right? Before you get the proof of use. And that's okay. Do the examination, lock up the name, and when your product's ready, submit your use, hopefully within 5 years, right? And then you've got your trademark. You've got your early filing date, and now you've got your use date. So that's trademarks. Copyrights, it's a cover sheet and a fee. So when your code is fully baked, or it's always going to be updated. It's never done. Your code is never done, pretty much ever, right? You're always improving it, changing it somehow, right? So you register it, copyright, first few pages, last few pages, cover sheet, and you've got your copyright. And as you make changes, you can make other adjustments, but you can get your copyright easily, cheaply. Cheaply. It really is cheap. And trademark is in the next couple $1,000s for a trademark to get it fully registered. So that's what you pay, right?
If I register in the US, for example.
In the US.
US. So the same registration applicable for international or is a separate channel?
It is geographic. Copyrights, the common law uses, that is no registration, like your natural rights to copyright, covers the world in different ways in different countries. Right? China is different from Japan, different from the US. And they all have rights, but they're very much harmonized, and you do have rights. You do have copyrights, right? And with trademarks, you have rights by their use. You don't have to register your trademarks. You don't have to. But your trademark, as we talked about the donut shop, the restaurant, right? If you don't register it, you're limited to the scope of use. If it's on the internet, the scope of use is arguably worldwide. If it's not, it's local. If you register it, it's geographic, it's United States. Trademark, geographic. Patents, geographic. You file a patent in the United States, you have protection in the United States when it issues as a patent, right? Trademark, same thing. If you want to file in foreign countries, there are different mechanisms for doing that, leveraging your early filing date, right? So you can file in China, same copyright, you have rights in China. File the trademark in China, same trademark, same product description. You get the translations and everything, but it's the same type of registration. And you can file everywhere in the world and spend all your money on trademarks. It truly, the companies that file trademarks everywhere cigarette companies, Nike, right? Different places, because they have trademarks in every country. They sell cigarettes in the Middle East and in Africa and South America, right? In large quantities. So it's important. They will spend $150,000 to file one trademark, and they need to file it on the same day, right? So that's a big process, but that's what they do. As a company, let's say you're doing a piece of hardware, and you have your trademarks will extend wherever your product ends up. You produce them in China, you produce them in Taiwan, you might produce them in Korea, you might produce them in India, right? Japan. And those may be where your customers are. Produced, your customers, competition, that kind of thing. That's what you leverage, and you register in those countries. How am I doing on time? Are you coming to tell me the time? Are you gonna tell me? How am I doing on time, by the way? I don't even have a watch. The time? 7:10, and we're going to 8. Okay. In 10 minutes, I want to talk about patents, and then in 10 minutes after that, I want to take more questions. Okay, your question.
So if you trademark in US, but your product is a software product that is being sold in England and Europe, and I've not trademarked EU countries, let's say.
You haven't registered it, right?
I've not registered it there. Am I exposed in those countries?
You would have more protection if you registered it, but you're not entirely exposed. So when you use a trademark in a country, you have trademark rights. So someone else in that country cannot come in with a confusing trademark and confuse you, right? If you register it, you have a powerful mechanism to go after them for damages, injunctions, stop using my trademark type of thing, right? Easier to prove your case, right? So you want to get the key, like hardware, for example. You will file trademarks, copyrights, patents, in hardware. You typically go to Korea, China, Japan, Taiwan, sometimes Hong Kong. Often there's like drop shipping in Hong Kong to avoid taxes to go to the United States, all these different things, right? And Europe, right? So where your customer base is. They're geographic, but you don't have to blanket the world, so you're strategic, right? So you work with a good trademark attorney, they can understand your supply chain, your customer locations, and you can get strategic locations. So you get, 60%, 80% of coverage, and you don't care if somebody's infringing you in South Africa or something, right? I mean, that's just what you do, right? You do that calculation, right? Market potential, that's right, that's right. Let me jump to patents, and we'll get back to this, right? Patents is what I do, so I have to talk about them, yeah. And I do copyrights and trademarks too. Patents are really interesting because you don't register a patent, meaning it's not clearly defined, right? It's not like a trademark, you know what that thing is pretty much. It's a class, it's product description, it's a logo, it's a word, it's very short, it's not a paragraph, it's a trademark, it's a mark, right? Copyrights, it's an expression of something, it has to be substantially similar. So you compare the things. Is this a copy type of thing? Patents describe function, and it's much harder to really clearly define that, right? So patents essentially, it's a technical document. It describes a technical solution. Solutions are inventions, right? You put problems in front of inventors. They solve that problem in many ways. Those solutions are inventions. Those inventions can be patented. It's that simple, right? It's easily said, harder done. So you describe your technology in great detail in patents. You have to put the detail in to the level that a person skilled in the art can look at this patent and go make this thing. There's no secrets that are missing. There's no black boxes that are not described. It describes generally what the function is and how you put it together. You'll see things like block diagrams, flow charts, and things like that. And there just cannot be any experimentation in order to make this work. Now, the claims are what you get, not registered, but you get allowed and you get issued as a patent. So this technical description is the background. The claims are the recipe lists of your invention. So process steps, step by step by step by step, maybe 4 or 5 steps, right? In the context of where this process happens. That is your claim. That's what you're saying is yours. So if a competitor, an infringer, is performing all of those steps in the context in which you described it, they're an infringer. They're an infringer. That's how you infringe a patent. You have to infringe every step of the patent claim in the environment in which it's described. It could also be a mechanical thing. They call them leg bone, thigh bone. This is connected to this is connected to this, and the function and the description, and the function of what these components do, how they work together and perform, right? And you typically will, for the filing fee of, I think it's $785 now, you get 20 claims. Independent claims describe one thing, and you could have dependent claims that say the system of claim 1 with this extra step, the system of claim 2 with this other step, or this other component, right? So patents are very powerful because you don't have to have an exact copy of the product. So if you are able to patent a software function and operation, it doesn't have to be the exact same code. It doesn't have to be in the same machine. It can be performed by any type of processor or no processor, right? Maybe even a specialized circuit. So it's about the function for method claims. And with mechanical things or circuit components and operations, it doesn't have to be a specific microprocessor. It doesn't need to be a specific buffer or code processor, right? Or any kind of memory. It is a component that is described in the claims. And the broader you describe them with less details, the more types of products and different types of products they cover. Now, what's interesting is that it's easy to ascertain if you're infringing copyright. It's easy, relatively, to ascertain if you're infringing a trademark, is their confusion, right? Patents, not so easy. You need to understand the function, right? So there are lots of patents out there. There's millions of them. Build a product, I'll find a patent you infringe. I'm not kidding you. It's true. There are lots of patents out there, but not everybody's enforcing them, right? It's up to you as a patent holder, if you want to stop somebody, to enforce it. Stacks of patents exist that everybody's infringing, but they don't enforce them, right? So when you make proclamations, when you're raising money, you're making statements, we own the space. We patented that, we own this. You can say that about your trademark, we own that trademark, nobody else is going to use it. Oh, cool. Okay, we know that exists and you own it. It's exclusively yours. Copyright, pretty much the same thing. Patents, not so much. You can file lots of patents on the things that you created that are new, stuff that you designed and you invented, but you're using other people's stuff to make this product work, right? Computer has keyboards, it has screens, it has software, right? If you developed a new type of touch screen and you start selling processors, you buy the rest of the computer and you just kind of put it together and sell it, you've got that whole underlying mechanism that could be infringing many other patents. So you can't ascertain. You can't really ever make the statement, unless, even if you've done a clearance search and read a lot of patents, that we don't infringe any patents. So take away this one thing when you're talking about, you're selling your company, you're raising money. You could speak very clearly about your trademark if it's registered. You could speak very clearly about your copyright if you've registered your original code. Don't ever say you don't infringe any patents. You can't say that, because they'll usually they'll find one, they'll prove you wrong. And it also makes you look amateur. You say, well, we filed patents, we're not aware of any patents that we're infringing, and what we're doing is new, and we're just building this product. And that's good enough. That's good enough. Right? So, patents, trademarks, copyrights. Trade secrets. You think, well, those are just secrets. Put them in your pocket and walk away, right? These are just secrets. Not true. Trade secrets are something you really want to pay attention to, and you want to document them. You don't register them. You don't send them to the patent office. You don't file them with a government agency. You keep them internally. And the reason you keep them is to prove that you own them. You have them dated. You have a file, electronic or otherwise, right? So normally the way we do this is we meet, we talk about inventions. How many patents you want to file? What inventions do you want to protect? Give us a list of all the things you've done that are new. Invention, 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 all this new stuff, okay? Which ones do you want to file patents on? More importantly, which ones you want to keep secret. Because there are some things in your code or otherwise that you will never know someone's infringing. You may never see, it's not discoverable. You can't figure out if they're infringing or not, but it's important to you. It's valuable that it's kept secret. It gives you some kind of it improves your it's an improvement of your product. It's a differentiator of your product. Nobody can figure out what it is. It's secret, but it's in there, right? Always consider, especially with software, keeping trade secrets. Always consider that, right? If there's a chance the thing will get discovered when you sell the product, somebody reverse engineers it, right? Or you have to submit it for some type of standards committee submission or something, you want to patent that thing. If it's going to be discovered without your, or in your company activity or without your participation, you want to patent that thing because you'll know if people are using it, right? But you want to consider these. So with all the invention disclosures, that's in the first column, right? We're talking about your disclosures for when you're maybe getting acquired, right? Of these, you converted these to patents, but these others we kept secret and they're documented. And I'll tell you a little story why you document trade secrets. This is a true story. There was an investor of a company called Palantir. I'm sure you've all heard of Palantir. Some of you have heard of Palantir, right? Very heavily funded startup company. So much money, more money than they need to do with. An investor kind of camped out in their offices, right? He was a trusted person, right? He had his own desk and all this talking going on, and he heard everything that was going on. And he heard about something that was in their roadmap, wasn't in their product yet, and the charge was made that he stole it. How did he steal it? He heard the idea, he heard all the details, went and filed a patent under his own name. He filed a patent with the US Patent Office. When that thing published, this company blew their stack. I mean, here is this investor, he's on their board, he filed a patent, he took away this opportunity and filed a patent, right? And they thought, we got this guy. It's documented that he stole this from us, right? So they sued him for trade secret misappropriation, among other things. But that is a nasty charge. Trade secret, it's theft. We are charging you with stealing. You are a trusted individual, and we are charging you with stealing this technology. It will destroy your reputation in this valley, especially as an investor. Oh my God, right? I mean, you're going to tell me your secrets, I'm going to invest in you? Aren't you the guy who stole that thing and filed a patent? I'm supposed to trust you, right? So they sued him, and he lawyered up. He had plenty of money, right? Plenty of lawyers. They fought back. He won. How the hell does he win? He filed a patent. Oh my God, you stole this trade secret. They did not have any documentation of this secret. It was just talk. They talked a lot about it. How about this idea? Oh, we're going to do that later. I mean, this was like a big idea. And they talked about it. Nobody thought you had to write it down. Nobody thought you had to document it. We'll use it later. Why are we documenting this? We're filing patents. We're writing code. That's something else, right? They were not able to produce documented proof that they had possession of this idea, this trade, and it was fully baked. They just never wrote it down. Nobody sent an email. Nobody, submitted an invention disclosure. Yeah.
If they, like at this event, were videotaping their discussions, and they had a record that way, would that have counted as?
Yes. Yes, sure. I'm an inventor. I work for the company. I talk about the idea. This idea I talked about, this investor went out and filed a patent. That's the best proof you can have. Yeah, question.
So what I hear from USPTO is it's about first to file. It's not about what you have saved as a secret or something.
Right.
So then how does your trade secret, how could it have helped those people anyways?
Trade secrets are valuable because of their secrecy. And you need to take reasonable steps to protect your trade secrets. And if you do these reasonable steps, recording, documenting what the thing is, putting it in a file, having locks on the doors, I mean, obvious stuff, I mean, these things mean things in trade secret protection. Passwords to get on a server. Passwords to get into specific files that talk about trade secrets, right? Only the lawyers and some of the managers, maybe the coders, have that thing, right? I think the Coke recipe was like in a file in a locked box or something, right? And that's kind of funny. But with software secrets, it's the code, and your source code better be protected. You lock your source code. You don't share your source code, right? You have it only password protected, and not many people have access to it, except in terms.
Would you recommend various like services that are document signing services or crypto services for documents? Or is that a good idea to?
It's good if you use it. It's good if you use it. What I find, though, is that, especially if I'm introducing something new, I don't want to give them too much work to do. Because I mean, this is what we do is outside their job of making their products and doing their code. So we want to make it really easy, right? So they submit it to us, or there's an administrative person in the company. Submit your invention disclosure. And she or he keeps them in a file, whether it's a physical folder or electronic file, and they have all these things. The best way is invention disclosures, because you have all these invention disclosures. Put your trade secrets in there too. Make sure it doesn't get filed as a patent, but that's where that barrier is, right? The people who make that decision are the managers, head of engineering, CEO, whoever makes that intelligent decision. We're keeping that trade secret. Okay, close that file, but keep that file. Don't burn that file. Don't delete that file. That's your trade secret. And there is your record of your trade secret. And maybe you'll just move it into the trade secret section too. But you want to document it, identify it, own it.
So is that recorded anywhere when you file that? Is there a record anywhere that you've done that?
It's in your company.
That's it.
Make it recorded. Make it, so I mean, you have storage, right? Just like
Within the company, somebody steals it. So what happens?
keep a record of it. So, well, we talk about redundancy, right? I mean, have, like these invention disclosures, these things are pretty locked down. I mean, you've got only a few people that have access to that, and you don't want everybody getting their fingers in it anyway, because it's too confusing. You want a designated person or persons who have access to these invention disclosures, and it's usually an administrative person, maybe a legal person if you have that person. Startups don't have general counsels, right, or lawyers, but they have this thing that we can help you set up, right? Keep it on one person's server, have limited access to it, and have somebody organize it. And it's usually my connection person where I send them the patent applications we draft, they give us the invention disclosures, there's this person who does this, right? And they keep track of those. For redundancy, we can get all the invention disclosures, give them all to us, because no one's going to touch our stuff, which is heavily secured, and we're not in the company, right? So you have redundancy there.
I have another question.
Actually,
Sure.
I have so we discussed copyrights and trademarks and patents and
Trade secrets.
Now, almost everything before trade secrets, there are some gray areas and they can be infringed upon, and trade secrets seem to be the one thing that seems to be the safest to protect your ideas and your products. I mean, am I right in saying that?
If you want ironclad locked box, sure, because the world's not ever going to see it. You're right. Patents, when the patents issue, or when they publish in 18 months, right? You can request a patent not be published, and it won't publish until it issues. But when it issues, it gets published. The world sees what you put in there. That's no longer a trade secret because you've given it up, right?
So patents, they will be rigidly documented things and all. Trade secrets will be flexible. I mean, there'll be a record of changes in your ideas, updates to your ideas, updates to your product, as and when they go on. So every email that you send out to make changes to the software, or every document, every revision to the design document, everything, if you're maintaining all those things, and you don't need any legal things, complications over it. If you just maintain all these things, are you playing it safe by not going for patents and all? Because patents sounds very complicated to me. Patents and copyrights and registrations. Are you playing it safe by just having a very well documented trade secrets?
Well, so what is safe, right? I mean, if you lock everything into trade secrets, and many companies do, there are plenty of very successful software companies that have no patents. Many of them, some don't believe in them. Like, no, we're not going to do that. And they lock up the trade secrets, and they feel safe, right? If there's a chance you can reverse engineer and learn these new things that you're doing, then that's not safe. Also, because if they can get in and maybe tease your system, use your system and learn, oh, I see what they're doing here. They're doing this kind of process. They can copy that. And if you don't patent it, then you don't own it. They can learn what they want. There's no laws against reverse engineering. If you make a chip, if you make a piece of hardware, somebody reverse engineers it, they find all your secrets, they make the exact same thing that you make. If you don't have any patents, you've lost. They can do that. That's perfectly legal. That's why you want patents, to avoid reverse engineering hardware. But software also. Go ahead. No, let's finish this last one.
So, but we do see ideas jumping from one company to another company, like between Android and Apple itself, or a simple thing like searching an email. It was there on Hotmail, and then Google Mail comes up. It's right there. Yahoo Mail had come up. It was there.
Right.
So, what did these companies do to protect these little features? There are thousands of features in a simple email application.
They filed thousands of patents. They're not suing each other, right? But they do have patents on those things. If I'm Apple and I see what Google's doing, and if I understand this from the user's point of view and the outside, what they're doing, and I copy that, then that's perfectly legitimate. If they have patents on that, then you got a problem. Right? By the way, you don't always intentionally infringe patents. I'm sure you guys don't go to the patent office and read all these patents, right? Nobody does. But you accidentally, usually, patent infringement happens accidentally. They file lots of patents, and you can infringe. These companies file patents on this stuff. They do. And they have a lot of ceasefire agreements, because if they both have miles of patents, they're not going to sue each other. As a small company, though, just 1 second, as a small company, don't compare yourself to Google and Apple. They don't need patents anymore, by the way. They're so big, they're making lots of money, they don't need patents to stop other people, because they own their ecosystem. Startup companies, you need your patents, because big companies will steal them. If they see what you're doing, they're going to steal your technology. Plain and simple. I've seen it through my career many, many times. Pick a company. None of them are innocent. None of them are innocent. If you're not protected, they would rather take your idea than deal with you. They would rather take your idea, because they know the people that are inside. Should we hire this person? No, just take it. Because they do this. I mean, these managers make these conscious decisions. Make or buy, they say. Make or buy, right? Steal or buy is really what they're saying, right? I mean, they are. You had a question in the back. I'm sorry, it's been a while.
The question is that why is it that Facebook did not patent their like button? So what is patentable here? Because everybody uses it now.
Well, they were late in the game anyway. They didn't get smart about filing patents until many years after they started. So, but patenting, so what is technology? You have to develop something that is, it has to be novel, and it needs to be useful. And you can say the like button is useful, right? But there are many examples where you can click on something and it lights up. It means like, it means don't like, it means answer is yes, answer is no. I mean, you've seen these online things you fill out that predate Facebook that obviates things like the like button, right? But if there's some analytics behind it, if it means more than just like, if there's a system for collecting likes and making assumptions and making you vote a certain way, right? That's pretty unique. I'm joking, but if if they can take something useful from the ecosystem of likes, make some assumptions based on you different people and different contexts, that's something different. There's some technology in there that's doing something, right? That's Pat.
So if I have a trade secret and somebody a couple of years later goes and patents it, they've independently discovered it perhaps. Can they sue me, and can I defend myself if they sue me?
That's a good question.
Can you repeat that question?
The question, this is actually a very good question. I invent something, and I've seen this happen where months later somebody invents the same thing. Years later they invent the same thing. What's really interesting, especially when you look at heavily patented areas, you'll see companies that kind of converge in the same solution. Like, how does that happen, right? You've got people, men and women, who learn the same scientific method processes. They took the same science classes. And there is this human ingenuity to solving problems. But when it comes to a problem that everybody's after to solve, often you converge and you end up getting the same invention that solves it, right? In the old days, whoever invented it first and then patented it, as long as you were working to solve it, you get the early filing date. Nowadays, it's first to file. So whoever files it first gets the patent. But if you prove that you independently did it and that you didn't conceal it, then you could possibly invalidate the patent. And it's a long discussion to describe how that works, but you're not completely off the hook, but the patents are easily invalidated when you find evidence that other people have done it before. I'll just leave it at that, right? Yeah. That's right, but you used it, and it was, I mean, if you came up with it, documented it, put away and didn't use it, then it's arguable to say that you concealed it. So if you not that you did anything bad. I mean, you invented something, for God's sake. You're just not using it, right? You're not sharing it, but who says you need to, right? But it could arguably, if you end up implementing it later, you could possibly be held for patent infringement depending on what the claims look like, right? If it's exact, then you have an argument that it already existed.
What is the life of this patent, trademark, and copyright?
What's the what?
What is lifetime?
Lifetime. Trademarks are the life, trademarks can last forever as long as you use it, right? Copyrights are 75 years plus the life of the creator. With a company, it's 100 years plus the life of the creator, 75 years for a company. So Mickey Mouse, Steamboat Willie, recently they expired, right? Because it was made in like the 30s, 20s, the 30s, something like that. And it was kind of a big deal, right? So what did they do? It was actually genius. They could not copyright it. You can't file it again because it belongs to the world after that. So look at the tags now. Go to Disneyland. They're using it as a trademark. So they're using Mickey Mouse on the tags, Sorcerer's Apprentice, whatever it is, it's Mickey Mouse face. Now it's a trademark. So now you can't take Mickey Mouse and use it as a trademark because they're using it as a trademark, right? So it goes from copyright, and trademarks can last forever as long as you use them. Patents are 20 years from the date you file. So you file, it takes a couple of years sometimes to get the patent issued, and that leftover time is when you can enforce it. 20 years, expires, belongs to the rest of the world.
How much money do you have to pay to do that?
So let's talk about cost in general, right? Copyrights are cheap. A couple $100 get you a filing. Really, they're all there is to it. You can learn to do it yourself. It's better to have a lawyer do it at least the first time, and then you'll do it yourself. In fact, that's what I encourage. We don't make a lot of money off these things. Especially if you're filing lots of copyrights, I would rather teach you to do it. It's not a big money maker, right? So I'd rather, and it's something you can keep, and it would encourage you to do more, file more copyrights, right? Trademarks, it's around $2,000 to $2,500 filing to registration, or till it registers. It's easy if it's empty space, if it's Nike, if it, like that, right? It means nothing, easy to get a trademark. If it's threat, right? Threat plus something, or anything else, very difficult. The trademark attorney will say, it looks like everybody else, right? And you have to think about that too, when they tell you that. If they say you look like everybody else, why do you want that trademark? You don't want to look like everybody else. You want to be you. You want to be different than everybody in the industry, right? In that company, I got outvoted, by the way. They want threat on everything, and that's fine. If they want to do that, that's fine. But it's something to really think about. For patents, a little more expensive. So for provisional patents, for TiE members, we have a special pricing for getting a provisional patent on file. And this is important for you to know, provisional versus non-provisional. A provisional patent application, you can call it quick and dirty, but it is a description of your technology, all the details. Same level of detail as a non-provisional application, but it's not, there's no specific form. You can have flowcharts. You can have a paragraph that describes the function. You could have a hand sketch drawing, right? You can have, code. Not that you should do that. Pseudocode, right? Something like that. Describes function. Screenshots, UI, right? Mechanical stuff. You take your SolidWorks or however you've drawn up this mechanical thing, slice and dice it, file it with some words describing what it is, so you can at least know what it is, so they know what it is. So, and then within 12 months, you can abandon it, and it goes away in the world and never sees it. No one ever sees it. It just disappears. If you convert it to a non-provisional application, that's more of my work than your work. So provisional applications, more of your work. Non-provisional, more of my work. So the flat fee for getting a provisional on file is $640. And that includes the $140 filing fee, right? I mean, this is like Walmart pricing, so you know, right? This is really cheap, right? I want to encourage everyone, I have for years, to file soon, file early, don't wait. And money is always the thing that discourages them, always is. It's always because the last thing you want to spend money on your engineers, you want to get your product made, and I totally understand that, but it's a first to file system. So I try to encourage people to get it done early, right?
Which, like I say, a founder, like if they want to budget this, like which one I have to go first? Like is it a trademark or is it a patent?
Well,
Isn't it a strategy?
it's a strategy, sure. So with the trademark, I mean, you got to name the company and everything, right? If you're always going to be business to business, don't bother filing your trademark for a while. No one's going to steal that thing.
Like the symbol is really like aim.
Like what happened with Tesla, right? Model 3, Ford or GM had a 3.
Yeah, right. E. Yeah, right. Well, that's a game of kings, right? I mean, now you're talking about a big company with lots of money, right? If you're at a stage where you're pushing out products, you better start lining up your trademarks. Now your marketing department, has to start coming up with these names, because now they're looking at your market, right? If you're still banging together a circuit, if you're still typing code, why are you wasting time with the name of the company and your consumer brands, right? That's kind of folly, right? It's the marketing people's job to do that, right? And you could do it. If you love the name, great. But it's a process you need to go through with me. I mean, if you really are going to build a consumer brand, spend the time. And you could send out for a formal search. It's like $900. I don't do it. But they will give you a report this thick of every combination and permutation of the words that make your trademark. Super valuable for a consumer product. You don't want to go out there with your consumer name, oh, we love this name, right? And put it all over your products. People start buying your stuff and they love you. Uh-oh, we got to change our trademark. You've lost your brand. You know what it's like to change your name on a consumer product? How do you tell every consumer you changed your name? You're screwed. I mean, it's pretty bad, right? So you want to do that carefully, for consumers especially. Business to business is like, okay, what's your name now? They don't care, right? They don't care. They want your product, right? It's fewer in number, right? And yeah, so trademarks are important if you really are starting to build this consumer brand. It's really important. But if you're a tech company and you need to get a product out, you got a bunch of people coding, spend your money on the coding. Make them comfortable, buy them cookies, whatever it is. I mean, you want to make your product, right? Don't spend your money. Trademarks are a distraction, right? Just like your marketing plan. If you don't need it right now, why are you spending your time on that? You certainly don't want the engineers doing it. My God, they need to be building your products, right? So don't get distracted by that. So what's first? File provisional patent applications. I just told you how cheap it was. You got the deal of the century here, right? Right, patents. I'm not done with patents. So provisional patent applications. You can file a provisional patent application with 10 inventions in it. Put all your technology into one. And I'm exaggerating, but I encourage this usually with startups because you're doing one thing. You better not have a startup that has 10 diverse product lines because you're not going to go anywhere. I mean, unless you've got some Alibaba funding, you got lots of people, right? But that's not usually how it works, right? If you're making this one thing, you're making this end result product that has all these bells and whistles. They're all related to each other. Put it in one patent application. I call it an omnibus patent application. All of your inventions, thank you, 10 minutes left. All of the inventions in there, And what you can do is you can draft claims, we talked about claims, from system claims, how the whole product works, how maybe the memory module works, maybe how the data sorter works. You could have different claim sets on those. 20 claims, so you file a patent application, maybe it'll cost you $40,000 because you have many, many applications in there. Claim set, $785 on one invention. Claim set number 2, $785, right? So you have these claim sets, and you have multiple patent applications pending. They issue as separate patents. Now, big companies don't like that, because when I deal with the finance department, they say, we're paying $8,000 for a patent application. Why is that one $30,000? Well, it's thicker. Well, why is it thicker? And, you don't want to do that, right? So big companies like them to be all the same size. And there's a stupid reason, right? But that's how these big companies, they file thousands of patents. They've lost their sense of humor about strategy, right? Startup companies, the most intimidating patent is the omnibus patent application. Because if you get patents issued and you have a pending application, they don't know what claims you're going to get out later. Because you could file new sets of claims as long as you have a patent application pending. The signature omnibus patent application is the iPhone patent, as you can imagine. It probably was 2,000 pages when they filed it. Typical patent application is like 25 pages, right? Everything, soup to nuts. The most intimidating thing is getting that in front of a judge when you're Samsung and saying, I invented something. And the judge looks at this like, this is the whole phone. You're doing everything they're doing, right? And they have a hard time overcoming that. You can do that to your own scale with your product having your encyclopedia of technology, right? Yeah. Question back. Sorry, one second.
Questions which I keep getting from other entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
That might be valuable to others who are not.
Yeah.
So one of the points that one always have to measure is like, once I file my application, provisional is done. Provisional is 12 months, right? Now, post-provisional, if I want to now file, I have to pay money. I have to pay yearly money to keep the patent alive.
Right. Right.
How much is that in US law?
Okay. Filing a provisional application. Let's take one example. Provisional application, $640, you're on file. Okay, but I want to go through the whole stretch. Within 12 months, you need to file a non-provisional application. If it's a singular invention, it's $8,000 to $10,000, right? If it's multiples, right, it's 8 typically. If it's an omnibus, it's about half that cost, right? It goes in front of the examiner, you just spend $10,000, roughly. It goes in front of the examiner, office action, that a lawyer needs to respond to, about $2,500 each. So expect double that price. So $10,000, another $10,000, conservatively. Patent issues, you're not done yet. You still want your money. So the lawyer's pretty much done. Then there's maintenance fees. Every 3.5 years after the patent issues, you pay a maintenance fees for 3 consecutive ones. So it's at 3.5, 7, and 11.5 years, and then you're done to 20 years, right? Sure, again. So after a patent issues, you get 3 maintenance fees in the United States. 3.5 years, 7 years, 11.5 years. The first one, I believe, is $800. It usually triples after that and doubles that. It's like $4,000 for the last one. The idea is that it's probably more valuable as time goes on, so the patent office wants more of your money. That's their maintenance fee.
But also, this is just US patent.
Just US.
Now, if I have to protect it elsewhere, I gotta shell the same amount of money
Yep,
elsewhere.
and a lot more. So I'm going to give you the scary numbers for foreign filing, right? Typically, companies on average don't file more than 10 or 15% of their patents in foreign countries because it's scary, it's very expensive. So it's roughly a few $1,000s per country just to get on file. So let's just say Korea, Japan, China, Europe, right? And the thumb rule is it's from $60,000 to $70,000 to take a patent, US and these few countries, to get a patent issued. That's roughly for one patent. And that's because when you go to China, there's translation fees, and there's examination fees, and they have maintenance fees every year, even when you're prosecuting the patents, and they're high. So So it's expensive.
But in Europe, you can do the European Union through a PCT, right, filing?
Okay, how much time do we have? No, your question's valid. I just want to make sure I'm really thorough with everybody who's listening here, right? So you must have some experience in this. So if you want to file in foreign countries, that 12-month date is also a scary date because you have to decide, do you want to file foreign? So you file the provisional, 12 months come. Okay, I'm going to convert the US. What about foreign countries? Okay, what does that cost? You could spend $4,000 and buy another year and a half before you have to file in foreign countries directly. And that's worth it. Usually they do that. Usually startups will do that because they don't have a check for 60 grand. That's really like 30 grand to go and file in these countries with translations, right? And then after 2.5 years from the earliest filing date, money, right? So you start paying money for translations, filing fees, prosecution in these foreign countries, right? But by then, hopefully you're acquired. So Apple and Google will be happy to pay those fees for you after they acquire you. They want to see this. They want to see some foreign filing. Yeah.
So two more questions.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
one is, most of the argument I hear from software companies is, why should I file a software patent? Because I'm just telling people what I did. And in software business, it's so much easier for me to actually work around your patent and come up with something which you could never prove that I copied from you. Unlike in hardware business. So do you hear these arguments, and what's your answer to that?
I would take those questions with each patent that you think you might want to file. So a software company will come to me with, let's say, 10 inventions, and they say, look, we have these invention disclosures. Here's the title, here's the abstract. Let's go through them, right? For each one of them, the number one question is it discoverable? Is this thing, can I see this when you sell your product? Or is it somewhere deep where no one's going to see it? Take it off the list, if it's hidden, right? If it is this fundamental thing, maybe some way of early on in the iPhone, selecting music, right? Or in the specific way that it functions, right? Maybe you've spent a lot of time with customers and you know exactly what they intuitively want to do, and it's valuable because this thing you put together is super intuitive. You want to capture that because it's from the user point of view, you can tell the function and what it's doing. And that's what you want to try to claim. Try not to claim something that's in the background they don't see. If the function of this invention is ascertainable from the user or from some investigation into this product, you should consider filing it, right? You also want to ask yourself, why are you filing patents in the first place, right? And that's always really the first question, why do you want to file patents? Well, we're raising money and they expect us to have some patents on file. Okay, well, then you have to file something. You feel like you do. So let's pick the ones that you want, right? Keep the list short. I always push to keep the list short. I don't, everybody's self-interested, but I don't want to overfile because you're wasting money. I'd rather spend more money have you spend more money on the stuff that's important to you and not file 100 patent applications, right? So you want to be discreet. And when things get tough and you need funding, your customers aren't showing up like you expected, I don't want you running out of money because you paid money for patents, right? Because that's an unhappy client. And it's really this, I really preach discretion when it comes to filing all these things because you could really go overboard. You can get excited about filing lots of patents, but unless you've got the purpose for filing these patents, you really need them, you shouldn't be filing many of them. If you're in silicon structures, if you're designing chips, if you're actually building a chip, that's the place where you really want to file patents. That's an expensive area because you could shave these chips down and Samsung can figure out what you're doing and just copy what you're doing and not have to buy yours. And if it's something that's super valuable, a more efficient battery or a more efficient circuit that uses less power, that's worth reverse engineering. There are companies that do it in Taiwan, in China all the time, right? So you want to file patents. You can also discover that. As hard as it is, if you're selling millions and millions of processors, it's going to be worth taking one of your competitors, if you suspect they're infringing, shaving that thing down and seeing if they infringe. So it depends on the industry. Some industries are extremely litigious, and you're going to want to have your own protection.
So let's have two more questions,
Yeah.
and then after that, people can ask you
Sure.
one-on-one. So take whichever two questions.
So Taking this further, is patent for a startup just for vanity? Because if Samsung decided to infringe our patent, how are we going to fight that?
You hire an attorney on contingent basis.
In no way we can spend $2 million.
You don't have to. You don't have to. Contingency, yeah. If Samsung is infringing your technology, is infringing your patent, that's the best thing you could hope for. The problem is when somebody small is infringing it, there's no damages. I'll take that case all day, right? So you sue Samsung in Texas, you get these wild judges that are very patent friendly, and they will destroy them, right? They'll not destroy Samsung, but you'll win. You'll win. So I hear that too, that, oh, we'll never enforce it anyway. No, that's not true. And when you get acquired, that company wants that patent. If you got something that's really key, Samsung acquires you or Apple acquires you, if they need that patent, they want to use it, right? Or if Intel does. Intel is very serious about patents. Yeah. Sorry, there's a question back here. I haven't heard from this guy yet. Yeah.
A couple of things there. So international protection we get from provisional for 1 to 2.5 years, 1 to 2.5 years.
That's for PCT. This is a PCT application. A provisional patent application, let's look at the timeline. The first protection you have is your provisional patent application. And you can file non-provisional right away, but typically you file provisional applications. That's your filing date. As long as you stay within these filing deadlines, you will keep that filing date in the United States within 12 months, in Taiwan within 12 months. If you file PCT at 12 months, you buy another 1.5 years. So now you've got 2.5 years from your earlier filing date, and that preserves foreign countries. When you file PCT, at the end of that 2.5 years, you choose from a huge list of countries, I think 185 countries, all of them that matter, right? Europe and Asia, even South America, Africa, if you ever file there, right? And so that's what PCT preserves. Your original filing date, as long as you make these deadlines, you file these things and you pay these fees, at 2.5 years, you can file patents in foreign countries. And hopefully you'll have money. Everything enjoys that early filing date. Right.
And you provide, how much time you need to file the provisional? Do you provide guidance? Do you do a couple of meetings with you? Or is
Whatever it takes.
Put it together and something?
Whatever it takes. I had a brand new client the other day. I looked at it looked like they wrote a non-provisional patent application. They really knew what they were doing. And I had very little to add, and we just put a sheet on it and filed it, right? That's not typical. If there's no writing, like especially if I'm with a client where English isn't their first language, they don't write very much, they do hardware. That's the extreme. We sit them down, we take the description, we do the write-up. The provisional might cost $2,500 or $3,000 because we did everything, right? So the 640 is when we do pretty much nothing. I still look at it, but I'm not writing it for you. If we write it for you, and this is also important to know, and this is something I think not many firms do, is the provisional application, we write them as much as we can, unless we're like in a big hurry, in the same format as a non-provisional. So when you file a provisional, let's say we got to pay us $3,000 to do it. When we convert it to non-provisional, it doesn't take another 10,000, it rounds up. So it's 9 or 10,000. So because it's already enough, we just stopped at some point and filed it, and then we just had to add some claims and do some writing. So don't be afraid of spending money on patents. I think that's my point here. There's ways of doing it without breaking the bank, right? You should get something on file unless you really want nothing on file and you want to keep everything secret. And there are arguments for that for some technologies. Yeah.
When you file a patent, how likely are you that that patent ends up becoming a patent and not being declined?
If you prepare it well and if you do a search, it's pretty good. We're not going to scorch the earth and do a search. So like in litigation, if you get sued for patent infringement, you want to scorch the earth because you're saving millions of dollars. You'll spend $100,000 to spend an army of people, to spend on an army of people to search. You're not going to do that for your patent application. You're going to do a very good, thorough search for $500 or $600, right? And there's this risk that you might not get the patent issued. But if you do a good search, you should understand where you're at. Yeah, there's always that risk, always that risk. I think we're out of time. But I'll stay after if you guys have questions. I'll take individual questions. Yeah. Thank you.